The announcement had barely ended when a cold voice cut through the polished air of first class like a blade. "Sir, we need you to vacate this seat immediately." Jordan Ellis looked up. The warm cabin lights reflected off the silver rims of his glasses, his face calm, but his chest tightened. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, skeptical, indifferent, and a few unable to hide their amusement. Sitting in seat 2A, the seat he had booked weeks ago, Jordan drew a slow breath. He was far too familiar with this feeling, being treated as though he did not belong in spaces long assumed to be reserved for others. Chloe Ramirez, the purser, tall and immaculate, but with no warmth in her eyes, stood before him. At her side, 2 security officers hovered, their hands too close to their tasers. The whole scene felt rehearsed, as if written in advance. Jordan tilted his head slightly, glanced down at his phone. The screen flashed a notification. $25 million, the first installment of a $120 million deal with Skyreach Airlines, had just been transferred. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, almost imperceptible. With one simple tap, he reversed the transaction. In that moment, Jordan understood. This was no longer just a personal insult. This was a battle. 3 hours earlier, Jordan had walked into the airport wearing a charcoal, grey tailored suit, a deep purple silk tie, and carrying a leather briefcase that held the most important presentation of his career. At 43, he was not only the CEO of Summit Capital, a multi-billion-dollar investment firm, but also one of the rare black men from South Chicago who had climbed to the top of Wall Street. He had prepared for this deal for months. Skyreach Airlines, a struggling giant drowning in debt, needed capital to survive. And Jordan was their lifeline. $120 million in exchange for a seat at the table of restructuring, a deal that would rewrite Summit's position in aviation. And yet, here and now, the very airline he was poised to rescue was painting him as an unworthy intruder in front of an entire cabin. Chloe bent down, forcing a brittle half-on smile. "Sir, we have a VIP who requires this seat. You may move to economy. We'll compensate you with a voucher." Whispers spread through the rows. Jordan glanced across the aisle. A heavy-set white businessman cleared his throat and returned to sipping champagne, as if this was routine. Jordan placed his e-ticket neatly on the tray table. "This seat is mine. Booked 3 weeks ago. Fully confirmed." His gaze held steady, but deep inside, memories came rushing back. At 17, a guidance counselor had told him, "College isn't for you. Plumbing is more stable."
tongue.
At 25, the bank had rejected his startup loan application despite a flawless business plan. At 30, in the Harvard Business Club, someone asked him, "Did you get in because of affirmative action?" Every time he was diminished, Jordan chose only one response: to prove them wrong with results, with relentless perseverance. Now, in this cabin, no one knew that the man being asked to leave was the very investor about to inject $20 million to keep Skyreach afloat. No one knew that a single tap on his phone could send their board of directors into chaos. And no one realized that each slow, measured breath was containing a storm. Jordan did not move. He looked directly at Chloe. His voice, low and steady, resonated across the cabin. "This seat I paid for. I'm not going anywhere." The air froze. The security officers stepped closer, hands brushing their weapons. A few passengers lowered their eyes to their screens, pretending not to watch. The silence was heavier than the engines starting up outside. Jordan felt his heart pounding, not from fear, but from fury. Not just anger for himself, but for every black traveler who had been pushed from places they rightfully belonged. He closed his eyes for a moment. When they opened again, his gaze was sharp as steel. If they wanted to drag him out of this seat, the world would know. But for now, Jordan Ellis sat still, hands resting on his leather case, his charcoal suit uncreased. A striking contrast to Chloe's dismissive stare and the mocking glance from across the aisle. They thought he was just another black passenger who had taken the wrong seat. They did not know he was the man holding the fate of the airline in his hands. And in only a few minutes, Seat 2A would cease to be the stage for humiliation and become the lever for an earthquake that would shake the entire aviation industry. First class was wrapped in an uneasy silence. Jordan Ellis sat still, his gaze fixed on the window, but his mind drifted back to the years that had shaped him into the man he was. The memories returned so vividly, he could almost hear the wind whistling through the cracked walls of the South Chicago housing projects. The peeling paint, the iron staircases frozen in winter. A thin boy named Jordan, clutching a worn book his mother had found at a flea market. His mother, a dark-skinned woman, bent from 3 jobs, always whispering in his ear, "Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong, Jordan. They will try to erase you. You must show them you exist." He remembered the night she cried over unpaid rent. Then the next morning, in pouring rain, still walked him to school with a smile, as if the world had never been unfair. From her, Jordan learned how to hide pain and forge it into strength. At 18, his guidance counselor shook his head. "Don't dream about Harvard, trade school is more realistic for you." Jordan said nothing. He simply applied, aced his SATs, and became one of the few black students in Harvard Business School. There, suspicion surrounded him. Classmates whispered, "He's probably here because of affirmative action." Jordan swallowed those words, only to rise to the top of his class and earn an invitation from his professor to stay on as a researcher. After graduation, he brought a flawless business plan to a bank. The branch director flipped through the pages and then set them down, voice flat. "Good idea, but we don't think you fit the image we're looking for." He walked out into the freezing wind. And in that moment of near collapse, Jordan vowed, never again would anyone define his worth for him. 15 years later, Summit Capital had grown from a 1-bedroom apartment into a firm managing billions in assets. Jordan was not just making money for himself. He employed more than 200 people, 40% of them women or people of color, those the system had overlooked. He never forgot where he came from, and he cleared the path for others to follow. Now the deal with Skyreach Airlines was the pinnacle. $120 million to restructure a faltering giant. It was not only profit, it was the chance to carve Jordan's name into aviation history. The sharp sound of heels broke his reverie. Jordan looked up. Chloe Ramirez was approaching again, this time with a middle-aged man in a suit, his face flushed with irritation. Graham Lockwood, Skyreach's Vice President of Operations, his eyes blazing with arrogance. "Is there a problem, Mr. Ellis?" Graham's voice was smooth, but laced with contempt. "We need seat 2A for a valued guest of the board. I'm sure you understand, certain positions must be prioritized." Jordan stared at him, unblinking. In that instant, he saw the fear beneath Graham's polished mask, the fear of power slipping into new hands, the fear of someone like him crossing into spaces once reserved only for them. His reply was slow, deliberate, each word sharp as a blade. "What I understand is that this seat was purchased by me. And what I know for certain is that you have no authority to decide where I belong." First class froze. A few passengers cleared their throats. Others quickly looked away. Chloe bit her lip, forcing a fake smile. Graham sneered and motioned the security officers to step closer. Jordan remained seated, his hand resting on his leather case, chin lifted slightly. Inside he heard his mother's voice. "Don't let them erase you from the picture." He knew this moment would define everything. If he stood and yielded, they would dismiss him as just another faceless passenger. But if he held firm, the truth would emerge. He did not need Skyreach. Skyreach was surviving on the capital he was about to deliver. Anger surged within him, but it was tempered by cold restraint. Jordan Ellis, the boy from South Chicago, now held the fate of an airline in his grasp. He thought to himself, "If they fight with humiliation, I will answer with power. And when this charade ends, it will not just be one seat that trembles. It will be the entire empire of Skyreach." As Chloe turned away, and Graham whispered into his phone, Jordan allowed himself the faintest, coldest smile. Because only he knew the $25 million had already been reversed. Skyreach thought they could degrade him in first class. They had no idea that in this very moment they had awakened the man who held their destiny. The clatter of suitcase wheels echoed from the front of the cabin. Preston Hale, tall and broad, shouldered in a gleaming pinstripe suit, entered with the scowl of a man accustomed to getting his way. In his hand swung an expensive leather briefcase, swinging recklessly close to others, as though the Entourage first-class cabin ought to part for him. His eyes swept the row quickly and locked on to seat 2A, where Jordan Ellis sat calmly. Preston's face flushed red. "What kind of nonsense is this? That seat is mine." The atmosphere shifted. A few passengers glanced toward Jordan. Others buried their eyes in their phones, but the silence was a wall of complicity. Chloe Ramirez immediately stepped forward, her voice sweet but edged with command. "Mr. Ellis, this is a VIP guest of the airline. We ask that you kindly move to economy. You'll be compensated with a voucher." Jordan lifted his head, his voice deep and steady, every word ringing clear. "I purchased this seat 3 weeks ago. The electronic confirmation is right here. I'm not going anywhere." Preston let out a mocking laugh, dripping with disdain. "Some people truly belong in first class, and some do not." The words landed like an invisible sap. A few passengers shifted uneasily in their seats, but no one spoke. No one wanted trouble. No one wanted to be dragged into a conflict they believed wasn't theirs. Jordan felt his muscles tighten. He thought of his mother, of the nights she worked 3 shifts so he could afford his education, of the moment he signed the very first contract for Summit Capital. Everything he had, no one had given him. He built it with blood, sweat, and pride. His voice cut through the silence, firm and unyielding. I belong exactly where my ticket says. This seat, 2A. From the corner of the cabin, Graham Lockwood stepped forward after exchanging a glance with Chloe, his smile thin and menacing. Mr. Ellis, we can make this easy, or we can make it hard. Your choice. It was a signal. 2 security officers moved closer, hands hovering near their tasers. A low murmur spread like wildfire. Some passengers discreetly raised their phones to record. Jordan knew he was being surrounded, but instead of fear, he felt the familiar surge of strength born from a lifetime of being underestimated and proving himself through victory. You can call this a seat reassignment, Jordan said slowly, eyes locked on Graham. But everyone here can see it clearly. This is a public humiliation. Preston leaned in, lowering his voice but making sure the entire cabin could hear. Be grateful they're letting you stay on this flight. If it were up to me, you'd already be thrown off. At that moment, Jordan's blood boiled. But he refused to lose control. He knew every eye, every phone lens was on him, and he wanted them to see not a man diminished, but a leader holding his ground in the storm. When the flight supervisor entered, her voice was cold. Mr. Ellis, this is now a security issue. We require you to move immediately. Jordan placed his leather case carefully on his lap, lifting his gaze to sweep across the cabin, each passenger, each averted glance. Then he spoke, his voice carrying. This is not a security issue. This is about who deserves respect, and I will not leave this seat unless you drag me out in front of everyone here. The cabin froze. Graham gestured. The 2 security officers stepped closer, hands now gripping their tasers. Preston smirked with triumph. Chloe bit down on her lip, her satisfaction barely concealed. Jordan closed his eyes for a brief moment. He knew this battle was far from over, and when it finally erupted, all of Skyreach Airlines would tremble under the weight of its consequences. Finally gave in, Preston Hale sneered as Jordan Ellis slowly rose to his feet. The 2 security officers closed in, not touching him, but their hands hovered dangerously near their tasers, a silent reminder that one wrong move would mean handcuffs. Jordan gripped the handle of his leather briefcase. Every step away from seat 2A weighed like iron. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from rage. Phones were raised throughout the cabin. Lenses quietly captured the scene. A black CEO in a tailored suit being forced out of his first-class seat to make way for a privileged white man. As Jordan walked down the aisle, passengers averted their eyes. Some flushed with shame, some pretended to scroll their screens, and others smirked openly. He heard the whispers. He must have done something wrong. Probably a fake ticket. Always causing trouble where they don't belong. Each word stabbed into memory. He thought of his mother, of her voice telling him, "They will try to erase you, but you must show them you exist." At last, Jordan reached row 34. A cramped middle seat wedged between strangers. The man on the aisle scowled, shifting just enough for Jordan to squeeze past, while the woman by the window pressed herself against the wall, recoiling as if from contagion. Jordan sat down, his knees slamming into the seat in front. The space around him was suffocating. From the crystal glasses of first class to the flimsy plastic cup now in his hand, the difference was crushing. He loosened his tie, breathed deep, but the fire in his chest only burned hotter. Moments later, a flight attendant walked by. Jordan pressed the call button. She stopped, avoiding his eyes. "What do you need, sir?" "A glass of water." Minutes later, she returned, dropping a half-filled plastic cup on his tray, water spilling over the rim. No apology. Jordan only nodded, quietly wiping it dry with a napkin. Beside him, the heavy-set man muttered, "In this cabin, they're never kind, especially not to someone like you." The man meant no harm, but the phrase cut deep. Someone like you. After all the years, all the victories, he was still shoved into a box, still reduced to a label. A chime. Jordan's phone buzzed with a notification. "Your baggage has been rerouted to Minneapolis." He closed his eyes. Inside the suitcase were copies of contracts, presentation files, and clothes for the meeting. All gone. This was no mistake. It was a deliberate warning. Jordan opened his recorder app, whispering into the mic. 1532. Baggage rerouted. Suspected deliberate interference. Responsible party. Lockwood. He had learned to fight with his sharpest weapon. Evidence. Whispers rose around him. A young passenger in front held up his phone, live streaming to social media. On this SkyReach flight, a black CEO was forced out of his first-class seat. Unbelievable. Within 10 minutes, the clip spread like wildfire. Hashtags not removed. While black and sky. Reach discrimination surged, thousands of shares and outraged comments. Jordan looked at his screen, his heart aching, but a spark of hope ignited. The humiliation was no longer confined to this cabin. It had escaped into the world, becoming a fire for justice. Meanwhile, in first class, Preston Hale reclined smugly, champagne glass in hand. He leaned toward Graham Lockwood, lowering his voice but loud enough for others to hear. "See? My seat has to stay clean. Can't have people like that dirtying it." Graham chuckled, but unease flickered in his eyes. He knew this had gone too far. And he knew if Jordan Ellis was truly who he suspected, then SkyReach had just dug a grave for itself. Jordan leaned back, his eyes blazing even in the dimness. He thought, "They can take my seat in first class, but I will take back the skies." The cramped economy cabin was only a temporary cage. Because once this plane touched the ground, Jordan Ellis would turn today's humiliation into an earthquake that would shake the foundations of SkyReach Airlines. The plane cut steadily through the pale blue sky. But in the cramped economy cabin, Jordan Ellis sat at the center of a storm. On his phone screen, the clip of him being forced from his first-class seat had already passed 500,000 views in just 30 minutes. Comments poured in. "This is blatant racism." "They kicked a black investor out of the seat he paid for. Hard to believe this is still happening in 2025. SkyReach will pay for this." Jordan drew a long breath. The humiliation of being marched out of first class still burned hot in his chest. But now he understood. It was that very humiliation that had become his sharpest weapon. Up ahead in first class, Preston Hale sipped champagne, unaware that at least 3 passengers had caught his sneer and his contemptuous remark. "Some people don't belong here," on camera. The phrase had already turned into a viral meme. Graham Lockwood was different. Reclining stiffly in his seat, his phone buzzed again and again. Messages from the PR team flashed. "Clip is viral. Crisis. We need urgent response." Sweat dotted his temples. He tried to appear composed, but dread was creeping in. If Ellis was truly the investor the board had been waiting on, the fallout would be more than embarrassing. It could sink Skyreach. In economy, Jordan remained calm. He opened his notes app and began to type. His mother's voice echoed in memory. "When they go low, you go high. But never forget to record every proof. Note 1. Asked for ticket 3 times. No white passenger questioned. Note 2. Water served in half, filled plastic cup, while others received full glasses. Note 3. Luggage rerouted accidentally." He typed slowly, each word a blade carved into an invisible indictment. A whisper came from beside him. The heavy-set man in the aisle seat leaned closer, voice low. "I filmed when they told you to leave your seat. If you need it, I'll send you the clip." Jordan looked at him, eyes shining. "Thank you. You don't know how important this is." He received the video and forwarded it to a secure email. Piece by piece, the perfect case was coming together. Nearby, a group of passengers murmured. A young woman live-streamed, her eyes fierce with anger. "They just threw a man out of first class because of his skin color. I saw it with my own eyes. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was clear discrimination." View counts surged. A new hashtag began to spread. #Justice for Jordan. Jordan straightened in his seat, his heart pounding not with fear, but with a familiar surge, the feeling before a major deal. A battle that demanded strategy, patience, and the perfect moment to strike. He unlocked his phone and texted Tiana Brooks, COO of Summit Capital. "Don't panic. Hold the $25 billion. I'll explain after landing. Prepare emergency boardroom." Her reply came instantly. "Video is everywhere on Twitter. Journalists calling non-stop. Are you all right?" Jordan's response was brief. "I'm fine. This is just the beginning." Back in first class, Graham Lockwood dabbed his forehead, turning to Preston. "Do you realize what you've done? The clip is trending worldwide." Preston smirked. "So what? A man was moved from his seat. Big deal. This will blow over." But Graham knew better. This wasn't just a man. This was Jordan Ellis, a name that made Wall Street banks tread carefully. If the media connected the dots, the consequences would go far beyond a single flight. Jordan closed his eyes, leaning back against the hard seat. The engines thundered like war drums. Behind his eyelids, he saw his mother's face, the doubting eyes of his school counselor, the rejection letter from the bank. All the moments he had been underestimated, belittled, dismissed, converged here. And this time, he would not just defend himself. He would take down the system that allowed it. The plane trembled slightly, Wi-Fi flickered, and a notification appeared on Jordan's phone. Skyreach Airlines, investigating incident on flight. On flight Kin 76. We value diversity and inclusion. Jordan let out a cold smile, a hollow statement, a flimsy shield. He whispered to himself, "You have no idea who you just woke up." The economy cabin was tight and unforgiving. The seat was stiff, the space suffocating. But in Jordan's eyes gleamed the steel resolve of a strategist. He was no longer just a humiliated passenger. He was the man holding the fuse to a reckoning that would shake Skyreach Airlines to its core. The wheels hit the runway with a small jolt, but in Jordan Ellis's heart, it was the toll of a bell announcing the start of a new battle. The familiar ding echoed through the cabin. Passengers hurriedly unfastened their seatbelts and jostled to grab their luggage. Jordan did not move. He stayed seated, steady, his sharp gaze fixed on the rows of first class ahead, where Preston Hale was straightening his tie, and Graham Lockwood whispered tensely into his phone. "Passengers are asked to allow those in first class to disembark first." The flight attendant's voice rang out, indifferent, as if nothing had happened. Jordan's lips curled slightly. "Let them go first. But when these doors open, I will be the one in control." The arrivals hall was packed, but in the sea of people, eyes turned instantly toward Jordan. A few economy passengers whispered, pointing. "That's him, the one they threw out of first class." A young man raised his phone, snapping a quick picture, posting it online. Within minutes, the hashtag #Justice for Jordan was surging. Jordan walked on, his back straight, leather case in hand. No one could see the faint tremor in his clenched fingers. Every step was a vow. Enough. It's time to turn the tables. Outside the terminal, a sleek black sedan waited. The driver, suited, bowed respectfully. "Mr. Ellis, the CEO of Skyreach has sent a car for you." With that single line, his true identity was laid bare. A few nearby travelers froze, jaws dropping. A woman whispered, stunned, "Oh my God, he's the investor." Phones lifted again, another clip uploaded. "The CEO humiliated out of his seat is the very investor bringing $120 million to save Skyreach." The news struck like lightning in a storm. The Skyreach Airlines headquarters loomed in the city center, 38 floors of gleaming glass. Jordan sat tall in the car, his reflection in the window calm as stone, though a storm roared beneath. When the car stopped, 2 security guards blocked the revolving door. One looked Jordan up and down, voice dripping disdain. "Who are you here to see?" Jordan handed him a card. "Jordan Ellis. I have a meeting with CEO Arthur Beaumont at 2 p.m. The guard raised his brows, eyeing the card, and then Jordan as if he were an imposter. "Wait. I need to verify this." Jordan stood firm, back straight, eyes cold. Again. "They still think I don't belong here." 1 minute. 2 minutes. Employees passing by began whispering. Some recognized him from the viral clip. Finally, the elevator doors opened. Arthur Beaumont, the CEO of Skyreach, silver hair, weary face, stepped out. He froze when he saw Jordan. His face paled, a mix of recognition and dread. "Mr. Ellis, I sincerely apologize. This was a terrible mistake." Arthur rushed forward, hand outstretched. Jordan clasped it, but his eyes cut like blades. His voice was low, steady. "You call that a mistake? Look at the clips flooding the internet." Arthur swallowed hard, then spun toward the guards, snapping, "Let him in immediately! This is a guest of the board!" The boardroom on the 38th floor gleamed with sunlight pouring through glass walls. The entire leadership of Skyreach sat waiting. As Jordan entered, chairs scraped. No one dared meet his eyes. Only Graham Lockwood forced a stiff smile, voice strained. "Mr. Ellis, what a surprise. I was told there was some incident on the flight. We'll investigate and handle." Jordan cut him off, placing his leather case on the table with a sharp thud. "Not an incident, a deliberate humiliation, and I have the proof." He raised his phone, playing the video that showed Graham giving the order to the crew. Graham's face drained of color. Murmurs rippled across the room. Arthur sat frozen, sweat glistening on his forehead. Jordan stood tall, gaze sweeping the room. "You invited me here to save Skyreach with $20 million. But I don't save companies that tolerate discrimination. I'll wait for concrete action. If not, then my capital disappears, just like you tried to make me disappear from seat 2A. A deadly silence fell. Graham tried to speak, but no words came. Arthur nodded quickly, his voice shaking. We will act immediately. Mr. Ellis, please, give us a chance." Jordan picked up his case and turned. The door closed behind him, leaving a room of pale, shaken faces. In the descending elevator, Jordan stared at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes glowed like tempered steel. They thought I would bow my head. But I've just put this entire empire under my hand. And outside, the world was roaring, turning one shove from a first-class seat into a fight to the death over dignity, justice, and power. The luxury hotel in the heart of the city glowed with light. In a high-floor suite, Jordan Ellis loosened his tie, sat in his crisp white shirt before a polished wooden desk. Beside him, his computer screen overflowed with news tabs. The clip of him being forced out of seat 2A had surpassed 10 million views. The media was calling it the racial discrimination scandal shaking the airline industry. Jordan poured a glass of water, his hand still trembling faintly with adrenaline, but his eyes burned with fire. This was not a time to endure. This was the moment to strike back. A ping. A video call connected. On the screen appeared Tiana Brooks, COO of Summit Capital, hair tied high, voice firm. "Jordan, the news is exploding. Partners are calling non-stop. How do you want us to handle this?" Jordan gave a short nod. "First, freeze the 20. $5 million already transferred. List the reason as suspected fraud and reputational risk. Second, assemble the full legal team. This is no longer just business. This is a systemic battle." Next to Tiana, Victor and Gwyn, legal advisor, leaned in. "We have the right. The contract has a force majeure clause in cases where the partner company violates ethical standards that damage the brand." Jordan's lips curved into a sharp smile. "Exactly. They wanted to make me look unworthy of seat 2A. Now I'll show them who really decides who belongs where." The door swung open. Naomi Park, head of internal investigations, entered carrying a thick stack of files. She dropped them firmly onto the desk. "I've just pulled Skyreach's complaint history, At least 5 cases accusing Graham Lockwood of discriminating against minority employees, all buried under non-disclosure settlements. Jordan flipped through the pages quickly, eyes cold as steel. Perfect. They've paved the road for us themselves. Naomi continued. Not just employees. A passenger last year also sued after being forced from first class to economy. The case was quietly settled, but I've obtained a copy of the mediation record. Jordan glanced at his watch. I want every piece digitized within 12 hours. By morning, we'll have a complete report. A second screen lit up. Ethan Shah, Summit's cybersecurity specialist, appeared from New York, a wall of machines and tangled wires behind him. Jordan, I've set up a honeypot system. If Graham or his people try to breach us, we'll catch them red-handed. I'm also tracking Skyreach's internal groups. Lots of chatter pointing to Graham giving the direct order to remove you. Jordan nodded. Pin everything, every message, every email. When the cards flip, I want evidence they can't deny. The golden light in the suite spread across the room, casting dim halos. Jordan leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. In his mind, his mother's voice echoed. Turn pain into strength. Don't just live for yourself. Live to clear the path for those after you. He whispered, This is no longer about a seat. This is about the future of an entire industry. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I'm a flight attendant from Flight 1976. I'm ready to tell the truth. Graham ordered us to push you out of your seat, but I'm afraid of losing my job. JP. Jordan clenched the phone, a cold smile flashing. JP, Jenna Patel. At last, the bomb has appeared. Across town, inside Skyreach's offices, Graham Lockwood slammed the table, barking at the PR team. We have to control the narrative. Spread word that he was disruptive, that passengers complained. Anything, as long as the blame falls on Ellis. But just then, his assistant rushed in, pale-faced. Mr. Lockwood, the $25 million has been frozen, and rumor has it Ellis is preparing to sue the corporation. Graham froze. He no longer had control. The storm he had triggered from seat 2A had now become a tidal wave crashing back upon him. In the suite, Jordan rose, walking to the wide glass window, gazing down at the glowing city below. The lights shimmered like thousands of eyes fixed on him. He whispered, his deep voice resonating in the silence. They thought I was just a passenger. They don't know. I am. The sentence passed on Skyreach. His hands pressed firmly on the leather case. Tomorrow, the report would be released. And once it was laid bare before the public, the empire of Skyreach would tremble from its very foundation. The next morning, Jordan Athtarhon sat in the hotel's private conference room, facing a screen split into 4 live news feeds. America seemed to wake up to his story. At the same time, the counterattack from Skyreach was beginning to rise. Finance 24/7 ran a sensational headline. Summit Capital CEO disruptive on flight. Sources claim Jordan Ellis was uncooperative with crew. A portly analyst sat in the studio, voice heavy with seriousness. There's a possibility Mr. Ellis deliberately staged this scandal to pressure Skyreach into concessions during the investment deal. This is no longer about discrimination, but about financial tactics. Jordan watched the screen. the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. He knew instantly whose hand was pulling the strings. Graham Lockwood. At Skyreach headquarters, Graham slammed his palm onto the table, barking at the communications team. Push this story hard. Paint Ellis as an opportunist. Use cut-up images if you have to. All we need is 1% of doubt. That's enough to cloud the truth. A young staffer spoke timidly. But there are too many passenger videos. All of them show Ellis calm, not disruptive. Quiet, Graham roared. People believe what they want to believe. We just need to plant the seed of suspicion. Across town, Jordan and the Summit Capital team were already prepared. Naomi Park spread documents across the table. Here are the 5 buried complaints. Here's the audio of Jenna Patel confirming Lockwood gave the order. And here, clips from passengers showing you being cornered by security. Victor Nguyen nodded. We'll release them to credible outlets. No shouting match. Just drop evidence, piece by piece. Let the public see who's telling the truth and who's spinning lies. Jordan sipped his coffee slowly, eyes like burning steel. Graham wants to smear me, but every time he throws dirt, I'll answer with truth. And truth has the power to destroy more than any lie ever could. By noon, the Wall Street Herald published an exclusive flight attendant reveals Skyreach VP ordered passenger removed from first class. Attached was an audio clip of Graham's voice. I don't care what his ticket says. That seat belongs to Preston Hale. Social media exploded. The hashtag #SkyreachTruth surged alongside #Justice for Jordan. Public outrage shifted to demands for a full investigation. At his office, Graham hurled his phone against the desk, shattering the screen. "We need a stronger hit," he shouted. One advisor whispered cautiously, "There's a rumor Ellis once failed at a small investment fund. We could revive it, spin it as proof he's unstable." Graham's lips curled into a vicious grin. Good. Build that story. Turn him into a fraud hiding under the mask of a hero. Later that afternoon, a conservative news channel ran a segment. Jordan Ellis, business leader or financial opportunist? Reports suggest he bankrupted a small investment fund in 2010. Jordan watched, his expression darkening slightly. It was half a truth. In 2010, he did fail at his first venture. But what they left out was crucial. That failure became the foundation upon which he built Summit Capital. He leaned back in his chair, silent for a moment, then let out a faint laugh. Thank you, Graham. You've just handed me the most human story the public will believe more than anything else. That very evening, Jordan appeared live on CNN in a navy suit, posture steady. The anchor went straight to the point. Mr. Ellis, there are accusations you once failed and that you're now exploiting your race to manufacture a scandal. How do you respond? Jordan looked straight into the camera. Yes, I did fail. But failure does not define me. It forged me into the man sitting here today. The man who built a multi-billion-dollar fund, created hundreds of jobs, and is ready to invest to save Skyreach. But instead of working with me, they chose humiliation. The question isn't how many times I stumbled. The question is, why, in 2025, is a black passenger still seen as unworthy of sitting in first class, even after paying like everyone else? The studio fell silent. The anchor nodded solemnly. On social media, Thousands of comments flooded in. He's right. This isn't just about one man. This is about all of us. When the program ended, Jordan switched off the TV. His phone buzzed with a message from a major partner. "We stand with you. Sky Reach will pay the price." Jordan gave a quiet nod. He knew. Graham had just lost a move. The dirtier they fought, the more Sky Reach revealed its true nature. He whispered to himself, voice low and resonant in the room. "You want to humiliate me with lies. I will bury you with truth, On the third night after the flight, the city had not yet gone to sleep when social media exploded once more. A flood of new clips appeared, passengers releasing more evidence, videos showing security closing in on Jordan Ellis, and clear shots of Preston Hale's smug grin. Each clip was like a knife, carving deeper into the image of Sky Reach Airlines, deliberately humiliating a black investor right there in first class. In the makeshift office at the hotel, Jordan and his team sat around the table. The glow of computer screens lit up tense faces. Naomi Park dropped another thick file onto the desk. "We have 7 former employees ready to testify. Every one of them was pressured or discriminated against by Graham Lockwood." Victor Nguyen leaned in, voice firm. "Legally, we already have grounds for a class action suit, but I think right now public opinion is stronger than any courtroom." Jordan nodded slightly. He knew well. The public was the first jury. At Sky Reach headquarters, the board of directors held a closed-door meeting. The air was heavy as stone. One director slammed his palm on the table. "The stock is down 15% in just 3 days. Corporate clients are canceling contracts non-stop. We've lost nearly $500 million in market value." Veteran board member Margaret Doyle turned cold eyes toward Graham. "Mr. Lockwood, how do you explain this? Every piece of evidence points directly to you." Graham swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "This is Ellis's plot. He staged everything to seize control of Sky Reach. Don't you see? This is a financial attack." But his excuses fell flat. The directors exchanged uneasy looks. They were beginning to realize Graham was no longer a shield, but a liability. Meanwhile, Jordan appeared on NBC's evening program. The camera zoomed in on his face, calm, steady, but his eyes burning with fire. The anchor asked, "Midterm, Ellis, Sky Reach claims you're using the incident on the flight to gain leverage in a $120 million deal. How do you respond?" Jordan gave a faint smile. "If I wanted leverage, I would have stayed silent, signed the deal, and ignored the humiliation. But I couldn't. Not just for myself, but for the thousands of passengers who were treated like me, and never had a voice. This isn't a negotiation. This is a wake-up call for the entire airline industry." The studio erupted in applause. Online, the hashtag #StandWithEllis soared past 20 million mentions. Graham Lockwood sat in his office watching the interview. His face flushed red. The whiskey glass in his hand trembled, spilling onto the desk. "He can't be allowed to turn this around," he muttered, then turned to his assistant. "Find something else. Dig into his personal life. Target his family if you must. I won't lose my seat to some black upstart." The assistant paled. But Graham had already slid too far into his own darkness to step back. At the same time, Jordan's phone buzzed. An anonymous email popped up. "I used to work under Lockwood. I have proof he took bribes from a supplier. If you need it, contact me. JP." Jordan read it and allowed a cold smile to form. The harder they tried to cover, the more cracks they revealed. The next morning, the Financial Times ran a bold investigative piece. Skyreach Airlines, a culture of discrimination or just an isolated incident. The article laid out decades of patterns. Black passengers routinely re-seated, hiring policies riddled with bias. At the center of it all, Graham Lockwood. The Skyreach board convened again. This time Margaret Doyle spoke plainly. "We must consider removing Graham. If not, this company will collapse." CEO Arthur Beaumont sat in silence, face grim. He knew he stood at a life or death crossroads. Protect Graham or save the company. That night, Jordan sat by the hotel window, the city lights glittering below. In the glass he saw his reflection, not just a businessman, but a man carrying a mission on his shoulders. He whispered softly, "This is no longer an investment deal. This is a battle to change how an entire system values human dignity." His phone lit up. A message from Naomi. "We have a new recording. Graham directly threatening Jenna Patel." Jordan closed his eyes, smiling faintly. The pieces were in place. The tower of lies was ready to fall, and when Skyreach began to crumble, he would be the only one left standing. Grey twilight cast its shadow over the glass tower of Skyreach Airlines. On the 38th floor, the board of directors gathered around the gleaming long table. The air was so heavy it seemed even the chairs trembled under the storm. Arthur Beaumont, the CEO, broke the silence, his voice hoarse. "We cannot drag this out any longer. The stock fell another 7% this morning. Major partners have frozen contracts. We need a decision." Every eye turned to Graham Lockwood. He still wore an expensive suit, but his collar was creased, sweat streaking down his temple. "Don't let the media and Ellis manipulate you," he shouted. "This is a deliberate campaign. Ellis wants to take over Skyreach." Margaret Doyle tapped her finger coldly on the table. "Do you have proof, Graham, or just empty words? Because we have proof to the contrary. Testimony from staff, Jenna Patel's recording, and even your bribery files." Graham's face went pale. For a moment, he could see the seat of power slipping from his grasp. The door swung open. Jordan Ellis entered, tall and straight in a deep blue suit. No one had invited him, but no one dared stop him. The room seemed to stop breathing. He set his leather case on the table, eyes sweeping over every face. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to remind you. Skyreach is standing at the edge of a cliff, and the one who pushed you here is not me. It is Graham Lockwood himself." Arthur stammered. "Mr. Ellis, this is an internal meeting." Jordan cut him off, his voice low but firm. "Internal. The entire world is watching you, and they've seen enough." He switched on a screen. The video played Jenna Patel's secret recording. Graham's voice rang out clearly. "I don't care what his ticket says. That seat belongs to Preston. If necessary, cause trouble to force him out." The words dropped like a hammer. A few directors covered their mouths. Arthur went pale, and Graham screamed. "Fake. He staged this. Jordan played the second recording. Graham threatening Jenna, his voice hard. If you open your mouth, your career is over. No one in the room doubted it anymore. Only contemptuous eyes turned on Graham. Jordan looked directly at the board. I was prepared to invest $120 million. But that money will never be released to a company that tolerates discrimination and hides its crimes, unless you prove Skyreach deserves it. Arthur's voice trembled. Mr. Ellis, what do you want? Jordan raised his head, his voice ringing like a bronze bell. Remove Graham Lockwood. Establish an independent oversight committee against discrimination. Reform every hiring and customer service policy. If not, Skyreach will fall. Not because of me, but because of the truth. Graham leapt up, roaring like a cornered beast. Are you all blind? He wants to seize the company. If I go, Skyreach loses everything. Margaret stared at him, her voice icy. No, Graham. If you stay, Skyreach loses everything. The vote followed. One by one, hands rose firmly. The result was clear. Graham Lockwood was removed immediately. His face twisted, eyes bulging, and with a growl he stormed out. The door slammed shut, leaving a hollow echo. The room sank into silence. Arthur slumped back in his chair, exhausted. Mr. Ellis, we accept your terms. Please give Skyreach a chance to survive. Jordan gave a slight nod, his eyes still sharp. This chance is not free. It comes with responsibility. I will not invest in lies. I will invest in change. He gathered his case and walked out. Behind him, the remaining faces stared not only with respect, but with fear. In the corridor, Jordan paused by a window. Below, the city glowed, traffic flowing like lifeblood. He drew a deep breath. For the first time in days, his chest eased. He had lost a seat on a plane. But today, he had claimed a far greater seat, the seat of power in the very boardroom of Skyreach. The storm has quieted. Graham Lockwood left Skyreach in disgrace. The board of directors was forced to reform, and Jordan Ellis, the man once forced out of seat 2A, now sits in the chair of power where the fate of the entire corporation is decided. But what matters more is not a $120 million contract. What matters is the message the world has just witnessed. A seat is never just a place to sit. It is a symbol of worth, of justice, of the right to be respected like anyone else. Jordan transformed humiliation into an opportunity for reform. He showed us that true strength does not only lie in wealth, but in the ability to use power to shatter injustice and rebuild trust. And the question for you, the one watching this video, if one day you see someone stripped of their rights, will you stay silent or will you stand up? Leave a comment with just 2 words, justice first, to show the world that you too believe respect is a fundamental right of every human being. Do not forget to hit like if you believe justice must be served, and subscribe so you never miss the next stories where courage and justice always take flight.